Hello, welcome to Anshika's Academy, and this is the series of ancient Indian history from R.S. Sharma. Chapter number 1, the significance of ancient Indian history. एक्चुअली पास में एक स्कूल है, तो ये जो आवाज़ है वो उसकी वजह से है. सॉरी फॉर दिस डिस्टर्बेंस. पर अच्छा ये डिस्टर्बेंस बच्चों की आवाज़ है. ओके, नाउ start the significance of ancient Indian history. The study of ancient Indian history is important for several reasons. It tells us how, when, and where people developed the earliest cultures in India, how they began undertaking agriculture and stock raising, which made life secure and settled. It shows how the ancient Indians discovered and utilized natural resources and how they created the means for their livelihood. We get an idea of how the ancient inhabitants made arrangements for food, shelter, and transport, and learn how they took to farming, spinning, weaving, metalworking, and the like. How they cleared forests, founded villages, cities, and eventually large kingdoms. People are not considered civilized unless they know how to write. The different forms of writing prevalent in India today are all derived from the ancient scripts. This is also true of the languages that we speak today. The language we use have roots in ancient times and have developed through the ages. Unity in diversity. Ancient Indian history is interesting because many races and tribes intermingled in every India. In early India, the Pre-Aryans, the Indo-Aryans, the Greeks, the Scythians, the Huns, the Turks, and others made India their home. Each ethnic group contributed its mite to the evolution of Indian social system, art and architecture, language and literature. All these peoples and their cultural traits coming so inextricably that currently they can be clearly identified in their original form. A remarkable feature of ancient Indian culture has been the commingling of cultural elements from the north and south and from the east and west. The Aryan elements are equated with the Vedic and Puranic culture and north, and the pre-Aryan with the Dravidian and Tamil culture of the south. However, many Munda, Dravidian, and other non-Sanskritic terms occur in the Vedic texts ascribed to 1500 to 500 BC. They indicate ideas, institutions, products, and settlements associated with peninsular and non-Vedic India. Similarly, many Pali and Sanskrit terms signifying ideas and institutions developed in the Gangetic Plains appears in the early Tamil text called the Sangam literature, which is roughly used for the period 300 BC to 600 AD. The eastern region, inhabited by the pre-Aryan tribals, made its own contribution. The people of this area spoke the Munda or Kolorian languages. Several terms that signify the use of cotton, navigation, digging sticks, etc. in the Indo-Aryan languages have been traced to the Munda language by the linguists. Although there are many Munda pockets in Chota Nagpur plateau, the remnants of Munda culture in the Indo-Aryan culture are fairly strong. Many Dravidian terms too are to be found in the Indo-Aryan languages. It is held that changes in the phonetics and vocabulary of the Vedic language can be explained as much on the basis of Dravidian influence as the as that of the Munda. India has since ancient times has been a land of several religions. Ancient India saw the birth of Brahmanism or Hinduism, Jainism and Buddhism, but all these cultures and religions intermingle and interact. Thus, two Indians speak different languages, practice different religion and observe different social customs. They follow certain common styles of life. Our country shows a deep underlying unity despite great diversity. The ancients strove for unity. The Indian subcontinent was geographically well defined and its geographical unit was supplemented but by cultural integration through there existed many states, languages, cultures and communities. Gradually people developed traditional territorial identity. The states or territorial units called Janpadas were named after different tribes. However, the country as a whole came to be named Aryavarta after the dominant cultural community called the Aryans. Aryavarta denoted northern and central India and extended from the eastern to the western sea coast. The other name by which India was better known as Bharatvarsha or the land of the Bharata in the sense of tribe or family figure in the Rig Veda in the Mahabharata, but the name Bharatvarsha occurs in the Mahabharata, the post-Gupta Sanskrit text. This name was applied to one of the 9 divisions of the earth, and in the post-Gupta period it denoted India. The term Bharati or an inhabitant of India occurs in post-Gupta texts. Iranian inscriptions are important for the origin of the term Hindu. The term Hindu occurs in the inscriptions of 5th to 6th centuries BC. It is derived from the Sanskrit term Sindhu. Linguistically, S becomes H in Iranian. The Iranian inscriptions first mention Hindu as a district on the Indus. Therefore, in the earliest stage, in the term Hindu means a territorial unit. It neither indicates a religion nor a community. Our ancient poets, philosophers, and writers viewed the country as an integral unit. They spoke of the land stretching from the Himalayas to the sea as the proper domain of a single universal monarch. The kings who tried to establish their authority from the Himalayas to Cape Comorin and from the valley of the Brahmaputra in the east to the land beyond the Indus in the west were universally praised. They were called Chakravartis. This form of political unity was attained at least twice in ancient times. In the 3rd century BC, Ashoka extended his empire over the whole of India. Bearing the extreme south, his inscriptions are scattered across a major part of the Indo-Pakistan subcontinent and even in Afghanistan. Again, in the 4th century AD, Samudragupta carried his victorious arms from the Ganga to the borders of Tamil Nadu. In the 7th century, the Chalukya king Pulakeshin defeated Harshvardhana, who was called the lord of the whole of North India. Despite the lack of political unity, political formations all over India assumed more or less single form. The idea that India constituted one single geographical unit persisted in the minds of the conquerors and cultural leaders. The unity of India was also recognized by foreigners. They first came into contact with the people living on the Sindh or the Indus, and so they named the entire country after this river. The word Hind or Hindu is derived from Sanskrit term Sindhu, and on the same basis the country became known as India, which is very close to Greek term for it. India came to be called Hind in the Persian and Arabic languages. In the post-Kushan times, the Iranian rulers conquered the Sindh area and named it Hindustan. We find continuing effort to establish linguistic and cultural unity in India. In the 3rd century BC, Prakrit served as the lingua franca across the major part of India. Ashoka's inscriptions were inscribed in the Prakrit language, mainly in Brahmi script. Later, Sanskrit acquired the same position and served as the state language in the remotest part of India. This process was conspicuous during the Gupta period in the 4th century. Although India witnessed the rise of numerous small states during the post-Gupta period, the official documents were written in Sanskrit. Another notable fact is that the ancient epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, were studied with the same zeal and devotion in the land of the Tamils as in the intellectual circles of Banaras and Taxila, originally composed in Sanskrit. Various versions of these epics were produced in different local languages. However, whatever the form in which Indian cultural values and ideas were expressed, the substance remained largely the same throughout India. Indian history is especially worthy of our attention because of a peculiar type of social system which developed in India. In North India, the Varna caste system developed, which eventually spread throughout the country and influenced even the Christians and Muslims. Even converts to Christianity and Islam continue to follow some of their old caste practices of Hinduism. The relevance of the past to the present. The study of India's past assumes special significance in the context of the problems we currently face. Some people clamor for the restoration of ancient culture and civilization, and a substantial number are sentimentally swayed by what they consider to be the past glories of India. This is different from a concern for the preservation of ancient heritage in art and architecture. What they really want to bring back in the old pattern of society and culture. This demands a clear and correct understanding of past. There is no doubt that Indians of old made remarkable progress in a variety of fields, but these advances alone cannot enable us to compete with the achievements of modern science and technology. We cannot ignore the fact that ancient Ancient Indian society was marked by gross social injustice. The lower orders, particularly the Sudras and untouchables, were encumbered with disabilities which are shocking to the modern mind. Similarly, law and custom discriminate against women in favor of men. The restoration of the old way of life will naturally revive and strengthen all these inequalities. The success of the ancients in surmounting the difficulties presented by nature and human factors can build our hope and confidence in the future, but any attempt to bring back the past will mean a perpetuation of the social inequity that affiliated India. All this makes it essential for us to understand what the past means. We have many survivals of ancient, medieval, and later times persisting in the present. The old norms, values, social customs, and ritualistic practices are so deeply ingrained in the minds of the people that they cannot easily themselves get rid of them. Unfortunately, these survivals inhibit the development of the individual and the country and were deliberately fostered in colonial times. India cannot develop rapidly unless such vestiges of the past are eradicated from its society. The caste system and sectarianism hinder the democratic integration and development of India. Caste barriers and prejudices do not allow even educated individuals to appreciate the dignity of manual labor and hamper our unification for a common cause. Though women have been enfranchised, their age-old social subordination prevents them from playing their due role in society, and this is true too for lower orders of society. Studying the ancient past helps us to deeply examine the roots of these prejudices and discover the causes that sustain the caste system, subordinate women, and promote narrow religious sectarianism. The study of ancient Indian history is therefore relevant not only to those who want to understand the true nature of the past, but also to those who seek to understand the nature of the obstacles that hamper India's progress as the nation. Chronology 1500 से 500 Dravid 1500 to 500 BC Dravidian and non-Sanskritic terms found in Vedic texts 300 BC to 600 AD Sangam literature 3rd century BC Prakrit as lingua franca 4th century AD onwards Sanskrit as the state language. Thanks for watching.